What if I told you there's a single, no gimmick tweak to your diet, no pills, no pricey powders that can actually rebuild lost muscle, even if you're well into your 70s? Sounds like clickbait, right? Stay with me, because randomized clinical trials back it up. The fix comes straight from the crossroads of muscle physiology, gerontology, and nutrition science. Yet it's still hiding in plain sight. An everyday food that most people overlook, misunderstand, or flat out underuse. Why does this matter? Age-related muscle loss sarcopenia isn't just about feeling weak. It tracks closely with hospital stays, falls, frailty, insulin resistance, and premature death. Researchers even call it the silent crisis of aging because the average adult loses 3 to 8% of muscle mass every decade after 30, a pace that accelerates past 60. But here's the kicker: that trajectory isn't set in stone. When you combine smart resistance training with the right nutrition, the body, even at 75, can still remodel itself in astonishing ways. So, in today's video, we're unpacking the mechanics of sarcopenia, why it happens, why it speeds up after 60, and how diet plus resistance training work in synergy. I'll spotlight the specific food class proven to ignite muscle protein synthesis, even when anabolic resistance sets in, and show you how to use it without extreme diets or complicated timing tricks. We'll also bust some stubborn myths around kidney health, protein absorption, and meal timing that keep too many people in a strength-draining rut. Let's start by redefining muscle. Sure, it lets you lift, walk, and balance, but skeletal muscle is also a metabolic power plant. Roughly 80% of the glucose from a meal is cleared by muscle tissue. That's huge because dwindling insulin sensitivity with age is a straight road to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular trouble, even certain cancers. In a landmark study of 13,000 adults, those with the most muscle mass were dramatically less likely to become insulin resistant, regardless of body weight or diet. In other words, two people can weigh the same, eat the same, yet the one with more muscle enjoys better metabolic health. Muscle is an endocrine organ that governs energy partitioning, hormone signaling, and glucose disposal. Think of muscle as metabolic capital in your body's savings account. The more you bank now, the more resilience you have later during surgery, illness, or everyday mishaps like slipping off a curb. One of my 70-something patients, who'd spent years doing basic strength work and eating balanced protein, bounced back from a serious infection faster than people decades younger. Her therapist was stunned. Magic? Nope, just years of quietly investing in muscle. Now, what's the nutritional lever that turns the tide? Protein, yes, but specifically leucine-rich protein in the right dose, form, and timing. When you eat protein, it breaks down into amino acids, and leucine is the spark plug that fires up muscle protein synthesis, MPS. The snag is anabolic resistance. As we age, muscle becomes less responsive to those amino acids. A 25-year-old might trigger robust MPS with 20 grams of protein. A 70-year-old may need 35 to 40 grams for the same effect. Here's where the food reveal comes in. Animal-based proteins, especially whey protein isolate and eggs, pack the highest natural leucine punch, about 10–12% leucine by weight. In a controlled trial on adults over 70, 12 weeks of leucine-enhanced whey led to significant gains in walking speed, strength, and lean mass. Why? Each 25-gram serving hits that magic 2.5-gram leucine threshold needed to fully switch on MPS in older muscle. Eggs deserve equal praise. They're easy to chew, digest, and fold into meals, making them perfect for seniors with dental issues or low appetite. Do plant proteins matter? Absolutely, but most have less leucine and lower bioavailability, so you need larger servings to cross the anabolic threshold, which can be tough if appetite is already fading. So, here's a practical starter move. Tomorrow morning, swap the usual coffee and toast routine for a shake with 1 scoop of whey protein plus a side of 2 boiled eggs or Greek yogurt. BAM 30 plus grams of high-quality protein, over 3 grams of leucine, delivered when your muscles are hungriest after an overnight fast. Remember, this isn't about bodybuilder bulk. It's about preserving function, getting up without help, hoisting grandkids, carrying groceries. But protein alone isn't enough without the right signal: resistance exercise. Think of protein as the bricks and resistance training as the construction crew. Without that crew, the bricks pile up but nothing gets built. We'll dive deeper into programming workouts in part 2, but here's the teaser: even 15 minutes of chair squats, wall push-ups, and resistance band rows 3 times a week can prime aging muscles to respond dramatically better to your protein. Quick myth. But before we wrap this segment, high protein wrecks your kidneys. Not in healthy adults. Research shows intakes up to 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight are safe for kidney function. For older folks, the real danger is too little protein, because appetite often drops with age, a phenomenon called the anorexia of aging. Miss the leucine threshold too often, and muscle melts away faster. Let's zoom out. Muscle isn't cosmetic. It's a top 5 predictor of how long and how well you live. Studies consistently link low muscle mass to higher mortality, while greater muscle mass predicts longer health span, the years you live free of disease and disability. Your 75-year-old body might not look like it did at 25. But it can still grow stronger and more resilient if you feed and challenge it properly. That's the first pillar of our 3-part blueprint. Understand muscle's true value. Supply leucine-rich protein at every meal, and start thinking of movement as an investment, not a chore. Up next, we'll show exactly how to pair that nutrition with resistance. Workouts to beat anabolic resistance and reclaim strength, even if you've never lifted a weight in your life. Let's pick up where we left off with the idea that protein is the raw material, but resistance training is the signal. And without that signal, especially as we get older, our bodies don't know what to do with the protein. The result? Muscle breakdown slowly outpaces muscle building. That's the biological backdrop of sarcopenia, but now we know that signal is still effective. The body still listens. The research is overwhelming. Resistance exercise is one of the most powerful, reliable tools we have for extending both lifespan and health span. A meta-analysis published in Aging Research Reviews, which compiled data from over 40 randomized controlled trials involving adults over 60, found that resistance training consistently increased lean body mass and functional strength. More importantly, these gains translated into meaningful real-world outcomes: fewer hospitalizations, reduced fall risk, faster walking speed, and better balance. One standout study published in the Journal of Gerontology looked at adults over 75 who were completely sedentary. Just 2 30-minute sessions per week of simple resistance exercises like leg presses, seated rows, and chest presses led to substantial improvements in muscle mass and strength over 12 weeks. That's right. Only an hour a week was enough to make a measurable difference. So no, you don't need a gym membership, fancy machines, or a personal trainer to benefit. What you do need is consistency, a willingness to challenge your muscles just a little more each week, and a clear plan. Here's a simple resistance routine I recommend for beginners. Chair squats, 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps wall push-ups, 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps resistance band rows or light dumbbell rows, 3 sets of 10 reps step-ups onto a low stair or platform, 3 sets of 8 reps per leg. Perform this routine twice a week. Keep your tempo controlled, about 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down. Progress doesn't mean adding more weight every time. It can mean slowing the movement down, adding a rep or two, or reducing rest time between sets. And if you're dealing with arthritis, joint pain, or mobility issues, you're not excluded. You just need to modify. Water-based resistance workouts, isometric holds, and seated strength training exercises are all great alternatives. The goal isn't to mimic a bodybuilder's plan. It's to give your muscles enough stimulus to adapt, grow stronger, and stay functional. Because here's what your muscles don't care about: your age. What they do care about is tension. If you stop applying that tension, your body assumes you don't need that muscle anymore and begins reallocating those resources. That's the biological mechanism behind muscle loss, a simple case of use it or lose it. So what happens when you combine this kind of resistance training with leucine-rich protein? Magic, actual evidence-backed, physiological magic. A landmark study in the Journal of Physiology showed that older adults who performed resistance training before consuming protein experienced significantly greater muscle protein synthesis than those who didn't train. In fact, the more intense the muscle contractions, the more sensitive their muscles became to amino acids in the following meal. That's the gold. Exercise makes your muscles more receptive to nutrition. Protein is the substrate. Exercise is the signal. Miss one, and you miss the synergy. So let's make this actionable. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or even older, start with a resistance routine like the one I just outlined. Do it twice a week. Then follow each session with a leucine-rich meal like 30 grams of whey protein or a combo of eggs and Greek yogurt. You've just given your body the exact ingredients it needs to rebuild stronger tissue. I saw this firsthand with a 74-year-old patient of mine. He was borderline diabetic, had mobility issues, and hadn't exercised in years. We started with basic body weight movements and gave him 30 grams of whey protein after each session. Within 3 months, his fasting glucose dropped, his strength improved, and we measured an increase in lean muscle mass. That's not theory. That's transformation. It's easy to believe that muscle gain is for the young and decline is inevitable as we age, but what if we've got it backward? What if aging is simply a process that's highly dependent on how we treat our bodies? What if decline isn't a guarantee, but a choice? This brings us to a broader game-changing concept, the idea that aging and muscle loss are optional based on your inputs. Let's take that further. Resistance exercise isn't just about building muscle. It also influences bone density, which helps prevent fractures and osteoporosis, glucose metabolism, which lowers your risk of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, inflammatory markers, which affect everything from heart disease to cognitive decline. So now you're not just maintaining strength. You're influencing your entire biological system. One major shift I recommend for every older adult is simply asking this question: what small signal can I send to my muscles this week that tells my body, hey, I still need this tissue? Because without that signal, muscle loss speeds up. And with it, you regain control. Let's also bust a persistent myth while we're here. That protein must be drastically limited if you're older, particularly due to concerns around kidney health. The truth? In otherwise healthy adults, even older ones, protein intakes up to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight show no adverse effects on kidney function. In fact, under-eating protein poses a greater threat, especially when appetite declines. With age, this natural decline in appetite is referred to as the anorexia of aging, and it makes hitting your anabolic threshold harder. That's why the timing and distribution of protein become so crucial. You want to maximize every eating opportunity. If you're eating only one high-protein meal per day, you're missing 2 prime chances to stimulate muscle growth. Research has shown that spreading your protein intake evenly, say 30 grams per meal, is far more effective at preserving lean mass than loading it all at dinner. We'll go deeper into the science of this in part 3. But for now, just remember, protein and resistance exercise are not separate strategies. They are partners. Each one boosts the effectiveness of the other, and together, they combat one of the most dangerous and misunderstood parts of aging muscle loss. So here's your mission for the week. Choose any 2 days. Do 15 to 20 minutes of resistance training. Follow it with a leucine-rich meal. That's it. Not complicated. Not exhausting. But immensely powerful. Coming up in part 3, we'll zoom out and tie all this together: protein quality, meal timing, exercise routines, and then connect it to one of the most important, yet under-discussed metrics of long life. Not just how long you live, but how well you live. Let's now take everything we've explored: resistance training, leucine-rich protein, and anabolic resistance, and zoom out to see the full picture. Because at the end of the day, this conversation isn't just about gaining muscle or maintaining strength. It's about longevity. And more importantly, it's about health span, which is the number of years you live independently, with vitality, and free from chronic disease. Muscle mass, as it turns out, is one of the most accurate and powerful predictors of that health span. You've probably heard that things like cholesterol levels, blood pressure, and BMI are key health indicators. And they are. But a growing body of research suggests that skeletal muscle mass is often a stronger, more reliable marker of long-term survival. In a major study published in the American Journal of Medicine, over 3,600 older adults were tracked over time. What researchers found was striking. Those with higher muscle mass had significantly lower mortality rates, even when controlling for things like overall weight, comorbidities, and activity level. That means muscle itself, independent of other factors, was tied to living longer. Another study, the Health ABC study, tracked adults over 70 and looked at their muscle strength and functional capacity. The individuals with the lowest muscle mass and strength were more than twice as likely to experience disability and loss of independence within 6 years. That's a clear message. The more muscle you maintain as you age, the longer you can expect to stay mobile, self-sufficient, and resilient to stress or illness. And these aren't just observational findings. Interventional trials where seniors actually participate in resistance training consistently show real-life benefits: fewer falls, faster recovery times, better mood, improved insulin sensitivity, and yes, increased lifespan. Even in their 80s or 90s, older adults can build muscle, improve strength, and reclaim functionality. Here's what this means practically. Muscle loss is not a default setting of aging. It's a consequence of disuse and undernourishment. Unlike your genes, which you can't change, muscle is malleable. It responds directly to your choices, your training, your meals, your daily activity. It's one of the most empowering feedback loops in your entire body. I often tell my patients, think of your muscle mass as your biological buffer. The more you have, the more you can endure. Whether that's illness, surgery, or even the everyday challenges of aging like balance issues or fatigue. I'll share a story. One of my patients, in her early 80s, was diagnosed with cancer and had to undergo aggressive treatment, including surgery and chemotherapy. Everyone was bracing for a rough recovery. But her post-op progress shocked even her doctors. Her resilience, stamina, and healing capacity outpaced many patients 20 years younger. Why? Because she entered treatment with a strong foundation of muscle. Her body had reserves, not just in strength, but in cellular repair capacity, immunity, and energy systems. This is why I frame muscle as metabolic currency. You can spend it, or you can invest it. The more you accumulate in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, the more flexibility you have to handle the unexpected. So here's the big takeaway. Aging is not just a slow loss of function, it's the gradual withdrawal from physical challenges that keep your muscles engaged. But you can reverse that trend. This leads us to a final, but often overlooked pillar: protein timing and distribution. Most people, even those who eat enough total protein, miss out on maximizing its benefits because of how they spread it out through the day. Let's look at a typical eating pattern. Light breakfast, maybe toast and fruit. Moderate lunch, say a sandwich with 15 to 20 grams of protein. And then a heavy, protein-loaded dinner with 50 grams or more. While that total protein intake might hit the recommended amount for the day, it's distributed unevenly. That matters especially for older adults. Muscle protein synthesis, MPS, is a threshold-based process. To activate MPS effectively, you need about 2.5 grams of leucine per meal, which translates to about 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein. If you eat less than that, you might meet your basic metabolic needs, but you won't trigger muscle growth or maintenance. A randomized trial published in the Journal of Nutrition compared two groups of older adults. One consumed 90 grams of protein spread evenly over 3 meals 303030, while the other skewed their intake, October 2060. The group with even distribution had significantly higher muscle protein synthesis and better nitrogen balance, meaning they were preserving more lean tissue. How do you apply that? Here's an example of a balanced, muscle-supportive daily plan. Breakfast: whey protein shake 25 to 30 grams with Greek yogurt and berries. Lunch: grilled chicken salad with olive oil dressing and a quinoa side, 30 to 35 grams. Dinner: baked salmon with lentils and steamed veggies, 35 to 40 grams. Each of those meals hits the leucine threshold and supports muscle recovery and growth. It's not just what you eat, it's how much, when, and how often. And to debunk an all-too-common concern, high protein intake does not harm healthy kidneys. The studies that created that fear involved people with existing kidney disease, a completely different population. For healthy older adults, especially those at risk of muscle loss, getting 1.6 to 2.0 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is not only safe, it's ideal. Now let's talk about the reality of aging. Appetite decreases. That's why seniors often struggle to eat enough protein. This makes it even more critical to prioritize protein first at each meal. Think of every meal as a chance to activate muscle growth. That mindset shift can change everything. One of my patients, a 75-year-old woman recovering from a fall, barely had an appetite. Her muscle loss was dramatic. We switched her to 3 meals a day with at least 30 grams of protein each, and added a whey shake between lunch and dinner. In 3 months, not only did she gain lean mass, but her physical therapy outcomes improved significantly. It wasn't just what she ate, it was how consistently she met that anabolic threshold. So let's recap the 6 core principles we've uncovered. Muscle is metabolic. It governs blood sugar, immunity, energy, and resilience. Leucine-rich protein is key, especially whey and eggs, which are ideal for older adults facing anabolic resistance. Anabolic resistance can be reversed with the right dose of protein and regular resistance exercise. Even in your 70s or 80s, resistance training is mandatory. It sends the biological signal that tells your body, keep this muscle. It matters. Protein timing matters. 3 protein-rich meals per day are more effective than 1 big protein bomb at dinner. Muscle equals independence. It's your cushion against illness, injury, and the setbacks that come with aging. None of this requires extreme measures, no crash diets, no hour-long boot camps. Just thoughtful, consistent action rooted in science. Small shifts repeated over time that protect your independence and extend your health span. So here's my 7-day challenge to you. Choose 3 non-consecutive days this week. On those days, do 15 to 20 minutes of resistance training, even body weight exercises. Pair each session with a meal that has at least 30 grams of high-quality protein. Track how you feel, your energy, your strength, even your mood. That's it. Just start there. You're not just building muscle. You're reprogramming your physiology, telling your body to stay in growth mode instead of decline mode. If this approach resonates with you, consider subscribing. We're building a community around real science, sustainable habits, and long-term health. No hype, just tools that work. And let me know in the comments, what's one small change you'll make this week to protect your strength and independence? Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We love hearing your stories. Until next time, keep training with purpose, eating with intention, and investing in the strongest version of your future self.